Hey everybody, welcome. It is your very last video that you have to hear my lovely voice. And let's get started. Alright, so we are going to look at the first six. First six are pretty easy. You just have to figure out if they're arithmetic or geometric. Remember, arithmetic are if we're adding. So starts with A, it's adding, and then geometric is if we're multiplying. Okay, the keywords to look for in geometric are factor of, cuts in half, those are keywords for geometric. Arithmetic would just be simply increasing, decreasing, etc. So if we look at the first one, it looks like everything's going up by 4, so that is an arithmetic. If you look at the next one, looks like everything's being multiplied by 2, so that would be geometric. If you look at the next one, we are constantly subtracting by 2, so since we're subtracting by 2, that's the same thing as adding -2, so that's arithmetic. The next one, the numbers are constantly the same except they just change from positive to negative. So that's constantly being multiplied by -1, so that's geometric. Next one looks like we just keep dividing by 5. Dividing by 5 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/5, so that's geometric. And the last one, we go from 20 to -60, so that's constantly being multiplied by -3. That's also geometric. Alright, so that's identifying. Okay, the next one, this will be on the test. You will have to identify the type of sequence. You're going to have to find a certain term and write the explicit and recursive rule. The explicit rule will be given to you on the test. The recursive rule will not. So in this first one, it looks like we just constantly multiplying by 2. So that is a geometric sequence. To find the 10th term, you're going to use the explicit rule for geometric. So we're looking for A10. So A1 is 15. So you should always list what those important pieces of information are. And your ratio is 2, and we're going to raise that to the 10 minus 1 power. When you put it in your calculator, make sure that you put in 9 and not 10 minus 1. And we get 7,680. The explicit rule is this right here. So we're just going to have A sub n equals 15 times 2 to the n minus 1. So here where we replace the n with 10, the explicit rule has no value for n. And the recursive rule is you have to state what your A1 is, and then you state your recursive rule. Remember, in the recursive rule for geometric, you have to put your ratio in the front. So the recursive rule would be the ratio times a to the n minus 1. Okay, the next one, if you were to subtract from right to left, you would find out that we are constantly subtracting 20, which is the same thing as adding -20. So your difference is -20, which makes this an arithmetic sequence. A1 is equal to 10. So since this is arithmetic, we are using this formula instead for our explicit rule. This will be given to you on the test. So we're going to say for the 10th term, A10 equals A1, which is 10, plus 10 minus 1 times the difference, which is -20. Then you would work all of that out either in your calculator or separately in your head. And you wind up getting the 10th term is -170, which means if you keep writing this out, the 10th number will be -170. The explicit rule is this right here. We're going to plug in our values for A1 and our value for D, but no value for N. So remember, first rule is to distribute, and then the second rule is to combine like terms. So your AN in this case would be negative 20N plus 30. Okay, your recursive rule is the same thing as the recursive rule for geometric, but instead of your ratio, like your ratios in the front, for arithmetic your difference is in the back. So you always state your A1 and then you just write your recursive rule. Notice how my constant difference was negative 20, so instead of putting plus negative 20, I'm going to put minus 20. Okay, for these next few, I won't go into as much detail. For the detail of how to do stuff, just listen to how I did 7 and 8. So instead, I'm just going to give you the answers and write out the work silently. So you see, we just keep adding 100. So that makes this an arithmetic. Okay, let me try to keep arithmetic in blue. So remember, for 16th term, we're going to plug it into A16. And the explicit rule will be the same thing, so 100, but we have no value for N. So remember, you have to distribute and then combine like terms. And then your recursive rule is to state your A1 and then make sure that, because this is arithmetic, that your common difference is at the end. Okay, this one, it seems to be that we're dividing by negative 3, which means that my ratio, instead of being divided by negative 3, it's really negative 1/3. To figure that out, just in your calculator, do negative 15 over 45, math, enter, enter, 5 over negative 15, math, enter, enter, and it'll give you your ratio. And it should be the same number. And then your A1 is 45. So remember, this is geometric. So to find the 16th term, you're going to do 45 times negative 1/3 to the 16 minus 1 power. Just remember in your calculator to put in 15. Now your calculator gives you an E number, so it gives you negative 3.136 times 10 to the negative 6, or E to the negative 6. Just remember, all that means is you're going to have 3 is part of your decimal, so you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how you do it. Starting from 3, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That takes care of the 6. And then you can put in the other numbers. Hopefully you won't have to do that on the test, but if you do, make sure you know how to count that decimal. Okay, here's your explicit rule. And then your recursive rule always states your A1 first. And then remember, since this is geometric, your common ratio should come first. Alright, for the next two, I'm just going to write in the answers, so it's going to be a little quiet, but hopefully everything I did for 6 through 9 helped you understand. Remember always to round to 3 decimal places. You know how strict I am about your decimal places. So this is geometric, so notice in my recursive rule that my ratio comes first. Okay, last but not least in this section, this winds up being an arithmetic. So remember, with your explicit rule, you have to make sure that you distribute, and this is only for arithmetic, and then combine your like terms. Remember your recursive rule, you must always state your A1 and then put in your AN and AN minus 1 plus the difference. Notice that here in the arithmetic, you do not have your common difference coming first, but it comes last. Alright, so that ends that section. Now we are going to move on to the sum section, which is your S formula. These will also be given to you. So you have to figure out if it's going to be arithmetic or geometric. Looking here, we're just constantly subtracting 2, so this is an arithmetic sum. So when you have an arithmetic sum, you do have to find A15. Once you figure out what A15 is, you will use that to get your sum. You only have to do this for arithmetic. You do not have to do this for geometric. So that means the 15th term is negative 30. So if I wrote this out to the 15th number, it's negative 30. Remember, the sum rule says that it's going to be 15 divided by 2. That's 15 comes from here, times the first plus the last. And you get negative 240. So remember, for arithmetic, you have to make sure that you find your A15 or your last term. Now the next one is geometric. And it seems like here we're just multiplying by 2. So with this one, you only need your ratio and you need your A1. So S15 would be your A1 times 1 minus 2 to the 15th. Don't worry about the minus 1, just do 2 to the 15th. All over 1 minus 2. Remember, with this one, you need your double parentheses. Remember, we did the double parentheses in class. Make sure you have your double parentheses, because if not, you will not get the same answer as me, which is negative 65,534. Okay, the next one looks like you're constantly dividing by negative 3. So this is also a geometric. So for geometric, all you need is your A1 and your ratio. Since we're dividing, remember, dividing is the same thing as multiplying by a fraction. So that means this would be negative 1/3. So now since we're looking for S15, you just plug and chug into the formula, but don't forget, you need extra parentheses when you have a fraction. So make sure that you do put parentheses around your negative 1/3, or else it's not going to come out right. So you're going to have 2 parentheses to start, and make sure that you have parentheses around your negative 1/3. And you wind up getting 4,500.0003. So it can just stay as 4,500. last one is arithmetic. You're constantly adding 6. So that means your A1 is 55, and your common difference is 6, which means you need to find your A15, which means you need to get your last term. So we plug this into the explicit formula, making sure that we plug in 15 for n, and we find out that our last number, because you need your first and last in order to do the formula, your last number is 139. So to find S15, you do 15 divided by 2 times 55 plus the last number, which is 139. And you get 1,455. Alright, we're almost done. Only got 4 more questions. And it's the dun-dun-dun word problems. Alright, so if she's starting a fitness program, she has 25 exercises that she does each day. And each week she increases the number of exercises by 3. So that means in week 1, she's doing 25 a day, which means your A1 is 25. In week 2, she's increasing by 3, which means that my common difference is 3. How do I know it's a common difference and not a ratio? Because I don't see the keyword of factor or multiplying. So once you don't see those keywords, you know it's arithmetic. So if week 1 she did 25, if you add 3, then week 2 she did 28. Add 3 again. Week 3 she did 31 each day. And then in week 4 she did 34 each day. Now, if they want a formula, this is really asking for the explicit rule. So we know this is the explicit rule for arithmetic. And you're just going to plug in values for A1 and your common difference. So remember, distribute and combine like terms. So your rule for this arithmetic sequence is 3n plus 22. So now we need to actually figure out, for 20 weeks, we need to figure out A20, because what that will do, and we're just going to plug it in here. What that will do is give us how many exercises she did each day on the 20th week. But it won't give us the total amount of exercises. This is just in week 20. So I need to figure out how many she did from week 1 all the way to week 20. So I need the series formula. So that's S20 equals 20 over 2 plus the first week, which is 25, and the last week, which is 82. We find out that altogether, in all those weeks, she wound up doing 1,070 exercises. That's crazy! Alright, next one says that we have a marching band, and the marching band has 5 musicians in the first row, so A1 is 5, and then 7, and then 9. So if we go from 5 to 7 to 9, clearly we're adding 2. So that is an arithmetic sequence. So how many musicians are in the last row? Well, we know that there are 8 rows, so we're solving for A8. So A8 would be, in the explicit rule, would be 5 plus 8 minus 1 times 2. And this will tell us how many we have in the last row. So we have 19 musicians in the last row. So they said how many total musicians. So I need to know from first row, which has 5 musicians, all the way to the last row, which has 19 musicians, what's my total? So I'm actually solving for S8. So S8 is going to be 8 divided by 2 times the first row and the last row. And this will tell me how many I have total. So altogether, I have 96 musicians in the marching band. So whenever you see total, it's most likely asking for the S. Now the last one is recursive. Recursive, you need this information. So we have my A1 is equal to 5. That's always the first thing you write for recursive. And then you continue it with AN minus 1 plus the common difference. So both of these elements are in your recursive rule. Alright, 2 more word problems. Okay, this next word problem talks about the University of Maryland, and it says that we started with a tuition of $10,000, so that's my A1. And then it says increase by a factor. Once you see factor, automatically you should know that's a geometric. And that means that my common ratio is 1.08. So the key word to look for in geometric is factor. Alright, so if we're finding the first 3 terms, A1 is going to be 10,000. If I multiply that to 1.08, A2 will be 10,800. If I multiply again by 1.08, because they want the first 3 terms, then A3 is going to be 11,664. So if you were thinking about in terms of years, 2001 is 10,000, 2002 is 10,800, and 2003 is 11,664. So if we want to figure out how much it'll cost in 2008, instead of multiplying all the way through, we're looking for A8, because that's 2008. So A8, since this is geometric, would be 10,000 times 1.08 to the 8 minus 1 power. Remember in your calculator, don't put 8 minus 1, but put 7. And we wind up getting that it will cost in 2008 $17,138, don't forget the cents, and 24 cents. Now the recursive rule, remember we always start with our A1, and then we write our AN. But remember, since this is geometric, your common ratio has to come first before you write AN minus 1. Remember, that always happens with the geometric rule. Now the last one is if you were trying to figure out the tuition from 2008 to 2012, what would be the total cost of your college education? There's 2 ways to do this. One way you can do it is figure out the tuition from 2008 to 2009, which would be A9, 2009 to 2010, that would be A10, 2010 to 2011, that would be A11, and then 2011 to 2012, that would be A12. And you can find out all 4 of those tuitions, and by doing that, you would just put it into your explicit rule. Sorry if my work is sloppy. And then what you could do is add all those up, and that will give you the total tuition for 4 years. So basically what we did is we found out our tuition for each year that we'd be there. and you wind up spending for 4 years $83,404.99. Now another way to figure this out is you can just figure out your S12, subtract it from your S8, and it'll give you the same answer. And I will go into more detail in that in class. Alright, last question is super easy. Basically, you turned 1 year old, you had 1 candle on your cake. So A1 is definitely 1. And then when you turned 2, you had 2 candles. And when you turned 3, you had 3 candles. So as you can see, we're just going up by 1. That is an arithmetic sequence with a common difference of 1. So when they said write a formula, that is the explicit rule. So AN equals A1 plus N minus 1 times D. So then you just plug in everything that you have except for N, distribute, and combine like terms, and your rule winds up being 1N, or just simply N. So they said write a recursive rule to represent how many candles you'll have on your cake. Always start out with your A1, which is 1, and then you write your AN. Remember, this is an arithmetic rule, so your common difference comes after. Now they said determine the total number of candles you've used on your birthday throughout your lifetime. Most of you are between the ages of 15 and 18, so that would be the number that you would plug into your SN formula. Alright, so for instance, I'm going to say that my age is 52, okay? Now we all know that I'm not 52, but I will never tell you my age. But I'm going to plug in 52 for N. My first number is going to be 1. And my last number, I'm just going to plug it into this formula. So A52 is 52. So I plug in 52. So now how many candles will I have in my cake in my lifetime if I was 52 years old, which I'm not, but hey, you'll never know my real age? Is 1,378 candles in my lifetime. That's a lot of candles. Alright, so that concludes the video. I try to keep it under 30 minutes. I'm right there. Now, if you really watch this video, I want you to ask me, what are my plans for this summer? Okay, so you're going to come up to me at my computer and be like, Miss Dorga, what are your plans for this summer? And if I hear you say that, I'll know that you watched this video. Alright everybody, good luck. I hope you pass this test, and I hope you bring your grades up. Alright, if you have any questions, ask me before the test really quickly, but no coming in for lunch.